And he comes. Welcome, Purple.
Hello, Jim. Bill,
You can't
Rabsy.
have 18 winners, by the way.
Well, you told me to be positive about 4 or 5
Well,
years
there's
ago,
only
and I've embraced.
9.
No, you can lose and still be positive about the loss, Bill. That's what you told me to be.
Got any news?
Fat sat in the cheer squad.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it too. All he did is grizzle about umpiring.
You sat in the cheer squad famously for
I did,
North
a couple of
some
times.
years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You felt
Very
really
welcome
at
in there,
one.
too.
You
Yeah.
looked
Yeah.
so
Loved
out of touch. It was
Loved-
embarrassing.
I was in there.
Yeah, but you
with
had
our people.
silly glasses on and your big nice coat. You looked fair to
Very good.
You did look at
Whereas
home
you
there,
just-
Jim.
You didn't look at
Whereas
home.
you look at absolutely at
I
home.
had the
Yes.
jeans on.
Now,
I'll tell you what is big, by the way. I've never noticed this. The cheer squads, how big their flags are. They're the biggest flags I've ever seen. You can't take an umbrella into the MCG.
Were you holding one of those big heads of Bailey Smith or
No,
George
I
Cameron?
had the flag. I'm throwing it around there bloody hard.
Now, news?
Yeah, the Paul Curtis situation, North will challenge it at the
Good.
tribunal. And again, it's just another, I feel, example, Jim, of the broken nature of this
totally
whole
agree.
system. The fact that, and I'm critical of Michael Christian at times, but on this occasion, he could either give that tackle of Paul Curtis on Josh Sin either 0 weeks or 3 weeks.
It
He
should
didn't
have
have the
been 0
scope
weeks.
to do 1 or 2,
Yes.
which may have taken some heat out of this conversation. But ultimately, he had to give it 3 because of the severity of the outcome for Josh Sin. And again, I don't agree with that, but that's what he was working with. So now it's over once again, Bill, to the tribunal to deal with it.
So what else was he meant to do? I mean, when you look at the vision of it, Purple, that's the bit. Now, the outcome no one wants,
No.
ever.
No.
But it's a contact sport.
It is.
And
Accidents
are
happen.
going to happen on a football field. But his knees, when the player went forward, his knees were on the ground.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's not like he jettisoned himself forward to drive the player into a position where he got hurt. It's just a nonsense 3 weeks.
In the last game of the round, the Hawthorn West Coast game, you've got the smaller statured and framed Nick Watson running down the bigger framed Harley Reid in a very similar manner and taking him to the ground, I'd say, as close as to the incident as the Curtis Sin one you could get. Now, Reid wasn't concussed, but he got the free kick and it's celebrated as a great tackle. And that's the problem with this moment, I feel, because you're penalising what has happened in the Curtis situation, but not in the Watson one.
And the only reason there's a penalty is because of the outcome to the player. Yesterday, you might remember this, Fat, you were at the ground. Paddy Cripps in the middle literally just and picked the player up and then landed on top of him.
Yeah.
And now we all said, what a crunching tackle from a huge, big power midfielder.
Yeah.
If that player under Cripps had been knocked out, that's 3
Done.
weeks.
Yeah.
And
That's the way it works.
That's as fair a tackle as you could put on a football.
Yep.
Actually,
So-
O'Shan did it late. Remember Harry Mackay out in the flank and
that
tackled him to the ground.
And that was wrong too.
That was a bad.
That was a poor call. But, Purple, I'm with you. I said this a month ago, blow the whole thing up
Start
and
again.
start again.
Start
It
again.
is
Yeah.
so broken and it's embarrassing to our game.
It is. And again, I understand the crackdown on concussion, but if you line it up, as the rules have now standing, that Paul Curtis's act was only 1 week less than what Nash did last week to grind Myers, and that was
That's right.
That was 4 weeks, just to remind people.
So, who took the hanger? The little bloke.
Corey Durden.
Durden.
Yep.
So if he knees a deconing in the back of the head, right, takes that big hanger, and he gets knocked out deconing, well, that could.
Yeah, that's the next phase
We
of this
hope that doesn't
conversation.
But
No,
that could happen
I
the
know.
way it's heading.
it's going to happen. Well, what if he attempts to mark Bill and doesn't take
drops it, yeah.
So therefore, that's even more open.
where it's
but
heading. So
it's going to head that way. At some
MRO's
stage.
got to be looked at, blown up.
Yep, blown up.
And just give me 30 seconds. The umpiring, even the coaches are talking about how bad the umpiring is.
Yeah, I'm not an umpire basher.
No,
but
we're not.
But I am with you that there is something not quite right this year with what's going on a number of issues,
Yes.
particularly the disposal and holding the ball. That's my big bugbear
So
with
both
what's
of
happening.
those have got to be looked at.
I
And
agree.
4 umpires, mate, 3 umpires or 2 umpires. Go back that way.
Well, not 2, but 3 I think we can go back to comfortably.
No.
The ruck infringement's the other one.
Oh, what's going on there?
No one understands
No, well,
what
they
the
blow the
hell's going
whistle
on
and
with
the ruckman look at each other and
yeah.
go, well, did you do something? Did I do something? Oh, it was me this time, was it? Okay, yeah. Now, you mentioned the hard body of Paddy Dangerfield. That skirmish he had with Jack Silvagni was, we believe, the cause of the problem he's now got with his
Broken.
hand.
Yep.
Yeah, and as Sam Edmund, as you said earlier today, Bill, was reporting, surgery or procedure now required. And I'm still yet to see what the club is saying about that. We'll wait for that as a starting point. But you'd think the fact that there's a requirement of surgery or procedure at at least that he's going to miss a match and maybe more.
Geez, he was tough.
I think he's been great, hasn't he, since he's come back?
Taped up and played that well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well done.
And I heard you talking about that too, Jim, but also Rolly Thilthorpe too had a situation where it was effectively I don't want to get too into the medical space, but he had dislocated fingers and there was blood in one of the photos, and I saw Josh Gabley today saying it was through the skin, which means compound fracture. That's tough too, because he came back out and took a couple of overhead marks.
Good clunks. He did, didn't he, big Thilthorpe?
Yeah.
What about Ross Lyon? Anything there?
Well, I was going to get to him in the negatives, but
this is a news little segment, this one.
Well, so we're going to commit to 3?
We
on
are.
the run?
You have well done,
driving you
Just
to
let
3.
our listeners in.
Yes.
I normally do 2, but Bill needs me to do 3, so we'll do 3. Yeah. No, Ross Lyon, Bill. Well, let's talk about it. It's interesting. Yeah, because he did go nuts, didn't he, during the game?
Gunter.
He went the quarter time vision, which was on
Gunter Steiner.
Yeah, Gunter.
So we saw, I suppose, as the game unfolded, some correspondence he had with his players on the bench during the first quarter, but it was actually the first quarter address of players where, if you want to lip read, you could see some words that were normally not spoken these days, and it seemed to be. He's clearly got prickly with it. Hugo Garcia I feel was made the example of what he was trying to relay to his players, and he's playing his 16th game of footy, Bill.
Right.
So he was taken
right,
and subbed out, which he's allowed to do, Ross, isn't he? Clearly, but I felt it was a bit unfair for a 16-gamer to almost become the exhibit A of what he was complaining about.
Well, we did the game purple, and I said during the call, I had the binoculars on the kid. I've never seen a sadder individual sitting there. And I, as a father of sons, as we all are, I actually really felt for him.
So you called that at the time.
I just said, I've never seen a kid look more sad.
Yeah, well, that's what we've been led to believe has happened since. And the natural reaction for a kid who was in his second season of footy and had a couple of okay weeks prior to that.
Yep.
The bigger issue for St Kilda is, and this is why I feel Ross will be half happy that we're talking about this, they've now conceded 110 or more points in the past 3 matches, which is not what Ross Lyon traditionally dishes up. Even in those dreadful years, previously at St Kilda, but more so at Fremantle in the latter stages of it. So 3 weeks in a row, consecutively against GWS, Western Bulldogs, and then obviously the reigning Premier Brisbane Lions got him as well. But that just has not happened under Ross Lyon's coaching. So they've got some major issues. And when they try and now put themselves into the market to sell themselves as a destination with the Tom de Koning pursuit, and there's some traction there with the money attached to it. But if he's now visibly blowing up at his own players, both during the quarter and at quarter time, it's hardly a place that's going to appeal, Bill, to people who've got a choice to make.
Still an interesting coach and a good coach. What about Friday night?
Well, he hasn't improved St Kilda when it's all said and done, and he's in his 3rd year. No, he hasn't improved them, Bill. I mean, just remind people, Brett Ratton won a final.
Yeah.
They
played finals last year, didn't they?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And they lost to GWS.
Yeah, that's right.
But Brett Ratton won a final.
Yeah. But aren't they rebuilding?
Well, what are they doing?
And they're on Friday night. St Kilda Freo, Jim.
That's the Friday night clash.
How's that
I don't know
game
where
gonna go,
you're
Jim?
planning to slot this,
7.
but now that we've moved it to
just
a 3
moving it,
segment, what I didn't see North Melbourne, Port Adelaide. You can talk about that as hard as you like. I obviously saw the replay of the fight. What I absolutely love is, and it was Jason Horne-Francis in this situation, a bloke thinks he's going all right and then turns around and sees
Big Tristan.
a mountain of a man in Tristan Sherry.
Wearing some headgear.
And you can see his eyes go, all right, now this has changed a bit. I'm now in a bit of strife that I wasn't in seconds ago.
He is a big man, Tristan
he's
Cherry.
a monster.
We had him in at the Sunday Footy Show handball segment a couple of weeks ago, and he's a huge man.
Strong.
Nice man. But
Lovely
in
man.
that moment...
He's in tomorrow. He and Goldman are coming in.
Tomorrow.
All
with the
right,
helmet.
more with Damo. So negatives and positives.
Yeah. And Sydney might get a mention. We might go positives because he's got to get up.
Right, I see. Right.
The rush
Positives.
We're going to start there, Rabsy. There's no better place, I don't feel, to start out of round 7, Bill, than Harry Mackay and the story attached to him, the personal reasons that he missed the early season matches, then the return, which lasted all of a quarter and a half before he got knocked out. And then, as we learnt after he'd played what I felt was the best on-ground performance against Geelong yesterday, the facial fractures that he suffered in that concussion moment 3 weeks ago. So he's had a bit going on, and then stood up yesterday, not just the 3 goals, Jim, but I felt it was the marks and the options he provided down the line, late in the piece. And I thought it was really crucial. And I don't think anyone, I mean, maybe Geelong supporters in that moment, but anyone outside that moment, Bill, would have begrudged what he did when he took that good mark in the last quarter and went back and kicked that goal.
Well, he kicked straight too, didn't he? Didn't get a coach's vote. Not one.
No, he did.
Where? Oh, sorry, he got 4.
You did. Again,
not one. In fact,
No, he didn't get 1.
was
He got 4. Yes.
No, but I felt it was. Yeah. I felt what he did was best on ground. I can understand why Nick Haynes was also prominent in that, because I thought he had an amazing game, given how poorly he started as a Carlton footballer at the start of the year. But he wasn't on his own when it came to that. They had, as we know, had 4 matches where they lost and have now got 3 in a row. But it was important for them, wasn't it, just to stay on the positive side of it.
Ronnie Lerner gave him 3 in the Herald Sun.
The Bogan.
Yeah, Ronnie.
Yep.
That they franked what they did against initially West Coast and then North Melbourne with a good performance against a very good football club.
It was a very good performance.
And their numbers now look good, and they've got a game against Adelaide this week. Obviously, as we touched on a moment ago, potentially and most likely without Jack Silvagni. Yep. Going to go with Andrew Brayshaw as the second positive out of the round, Jim. I think what he's doing for the Dockers this year is quite extraordinary. Now, I know he's not officially the captain of the footy club, but he's putting together a very, very nice season. I think as much as we often get to an end of a game of footy and wonder who may get the official voting, well, he won the Anzac Day medal or whatever it is they call it over there in Perth. Yeah. And it was just a standout win to me in what he did on the weekend against Adelaide.
He won the Derby medal, whatever they call that, the Glendenning Allen medal. Yeah. One voter just completely cocked it up. Otherwise,
right.
So he's having a very good year. As is Caleb Sarong. They're a 1-2 punch. And
10 coaches' votes, Jim, and he is equal second on the coaches' leaderboard.
Yep. And Sarong, I reckon, is very closely third. So no, they're very good players. Those two. I agree.
Arthur Leggett.
There you go. Thank you. Yes, the medal. Now, Jamie Elliott, I felt, look, I know Steel Sidebottom is leading that award you just mentioned, Bill, but and won the Anzac Day medal, and you cannot take anything away from that. But I just loved Jamie Elliott's game, the 5 goals that he kicked back on Anzac Day on Friday against Essendon, and the way he kicks them, the crucial times he kicks them, and the no-fuss element to his entire career. I just love how he carries himself and out there on the ground, and I thought he was great, as was Max Gawn the previous night, just to sign off on the positives from the Thursday game, and the 2 games he's now played, Bill, in the 2 Melbourne wins against Fremantle in round 6 and then Richmond in round 7. So going well. Marcus Bonampelli sat out the entirety effectively of the last quarter, and to me was still the standout player on the ground. He
got the 7
against GWS.
Got the 7 coaches vote,
which I think was the highest of any player on that ground, and that makes sense to me. He just set it up, and what he has done in the 2 matches that he's got back to in 2025 is quite extraordinary. And then our 4 and 3, the Dogs, and are just doing everything right given what they're up against.
No, they're going beautifully. We talked about Hugo Garcia before in the afternoon with the Saints. Hugo, if he was a bit older and a bit gnarlier, might have walked into the boss at some stage and said, instead of having a go at me, maybe the bloke wearing number 9 out there we should put just a modicum of time into. Lachie Neale didn't have a footballer go anywhere near him for 2.5 hours.
Well, that's where I wanted to go next, Jim, because his polling votes, I feel, again, we know he's already won a couple of Brownlows and was probably unlucky in another one. He could be.
No, he's a bloody star. Yeah. Literally no one wearing a St Kilda jumper went anywhere near him.
Which is strange
for
given
the whole game.
What Marcus Windhager has done on him in the past. Now, he still has impact, Lachie, no matter what you do to him by way of an opponent running with him, but it was unusual, wasn't it? To not see Windhager go to him.
So maybe it was a McCluggage, choice, and they went there. But geez, he was unbelievable, Lachie Neale.
He was. And Zorko's still playing good footy at what, 35, 36?
I think he's 36, isn't he? Yeah, we might just check that. Yeah, I think he's 36.
Good footy.
You talk about a couple of guys we regularly mention, and the fact that he was out, Zach Butters, I'm referring to, for the Port team early in this year. No coincidence in my eyes that was why they got off to a very, very nastily slow start. But since he's been back, they've just straightened up. They've toughened up. They've got 3 in a row now, North Melbourne being the most recent one. And I just love what he did as much in that 3/4 time break when the tensions were frayed and messy and there was arguments between Jason Horne-Francis and Kenny Hinkley and Connor Rosey was there. But I just love the way it was actually Zach Butters, who's had issues in this area himself, hasn't he, over the journey, and has acknowledged publicly he needs to address some of them himself still, but it was he who was probably as calming and as reassuring as anyone. So what he's doing this year is quite extraordinary, given he missed the start of it.
The Suns, They're going beautifully.
Unbelievably well built, yeah.
They
And
kick 11 in a row?
12.
12 in a row.
Yeah.
12 in a row.
And that was against the Swans, who were effectively 5 goals up at that point when that sequence of goals started. 2 weeks earlier, they kicked 11 of the last 13 against North Melbourne, as we know in gather round. So that's twice in 3 weeks. They've slammed on second-half goals to just take the game away from an opponent. And what it does, that win, it sets up, I feel, a great occasion, Bill. It could be the biggest moment in the AFL era for Queensland on Sunday night.
The
big Q clash.
clash. Yeah. That is a big one.
So it's a later start from a Melbourne
7:20 at the Gabba.
Yep.
Full house.
Massive game. And no reason the Suns are not going to be a massive chance in it.
Probably.
So it's going to be, as I think, as anticipated a game as we've had to this point of the season because I think they're real deal.
After we as we finish on the positives, the Cleveland Browns have drafted prime son. Shedeur Sanders.
Yes.
He was meant to go number 1 overall. He ended up sliding to 140 something.
And they've still got Joe Flacco as a quarterback
he's
there.
in his early 70s.
Well, he played for the Baltimore Ravens the year they won against San Francisco in the Super Bowl. So he's still going.
Has he got enough of prime swagger, the young fella?
If he's got anything to do with Dion, yes.
Third personing himself. I love it. All right, negatives next.
Third segment.
Oh, no. And one more positive.
One more positive. It goes to Jack Gunston for Hawthorn. Jim, just how he's managed to kick 4 goals yesterday against West Coast. It was a hard slog to watch that game. It was probably a hard slog to play in it, but he was the standout.
6 the week before.
6 the week before, and having a really good year. And given that Cal Shadir is still yet to be seen this year, he's getting closer, by the way. He's not too far away. Yeah. But I just raised his name, Bill, because it was last year he was almost assisting him, wasn't he, to get a game and had a great season contextually, Cal Shadir, and it was at Jack's expense to a point, and may well be again at later in the year when Cal Shadir does get some fitness back. But it's a good story, isn't it, what he's done? How he's still
we love
impacting.
Him. He's a Triple M man.
He's a Triple M man.
Gunners, he's a ripper. Yep. So well done.
Well done.
All right, negatives.
Negative, Damo.
West Coast is creating a massive problem with the Oscar Allen situation, aren't they? And when I say creating it, he's created himself by meeting with Sam Mitchell, or at least being exposed publicly for meeting with Sam Mitchell, and the hostage style of presentation to the public after that, and he just hasn't, unfortunately, he didn't present.
And he started
well
back, didn't he, on the weekend?
Yeah, he started back and just again did not impact the game of footy. He missed recently for resting/management reasons, Bill. And what are you laughing at now?
Well, look at his head. You normally wear earphones when you're on radio.
You don't need these.
Sorry, Purple.
I can
It was
hear.
2 weeks ago you were blowing
you.
kisses to Rabsy when you started
exactly.
smiling. I didn't know what you were doing.
You can't have it, can you?
No, you can't.
You can't have it.
You can't.
Are you
see
still
it.
walking, by the way, everywhere?
Why?
Middle of the segment.
Yeah, you've just been walking everywhere. You haven't got a car.
I've got Janine's car at the moment.
Oh, right. There you go.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I will keep going. Yeah, so there's
You
an
didn't
issue
try and
there.
sell one up in Ballarat, did you?
Bill, please.
Bill.
Now, I'll finish the Oscar Allen conversation. He, look, obviously there's interest in him, and Brisbane Lions and the opponents of yesterday, Hawthorn, are still keen to see what he wants to do. But I don't think his contractual numbers going up with how he's playing. And it's an issue for West Coast as much as it is Oscar right now, because they've got a long remainder of the season. They're yet to win a game under Andrew McQualter.
Exactly.
And the co-captain is not performing.
What are you hearing? Brisbane?
Yeah, I still think Brisbane's in front. Yeah.
That's what Rabsy told me.
What's going on?
He's lost the plot. Keep going.
No, I agree with that. Adelaide losing to Fremantle. I've still got doubts. So wins against St Kilda, Essendon, North Melbourne, and the previous week in round 6 against GWS. That was their best win in my eyes, the GWS win. But losses now to Gold Coast, Geelong, Fremantle. So just doubts, Jim. They just don't ever, I think, win a game that is line ball and one that can propel them into the stratosphere when it comes to their chances. I know they finished the round, Bill, still in the top 8, and maybe that's all they set out to do at the start of the year. If someone said to them after round 7, you're going to be there, well, good, but I just don't feel they've got
Blues
what they
at
need.
home will be a big test.
What about the Giants? What's going on
I'm
there?
right about them, Bill. Yeah. I think they've lost their spark. Yeah, and so it's consecutive weeks now. They only kicked the 4 goals against Adelaide the previous week, and now they've lost again on the weekend. So, look, there's an issue with Josh Kelly, who we've pumped up for pretty much his entirety of his AFL career, and rightly so. But there's, Finn Callahan, I thought he was okay on the weekend. It wasn't his best game, but the previous probably month for him hadn't been as good. Jesse Hogan back, but not firing and not functioning. Stringer's having shots at goal.
3 goals, 12 he's kicked for the year.
Yeah, so if he turns that around, we're not going to have the doubt about him. But there are, the way it's functioning in that forward line. And, there's just something not quite gelling there at the moment. It's only been the 2 weeks, 3 losses for the year, but the 2 weeks, it's not ideal. And
where are the Swans at?
Yeah, I think they're the biggest story at the moment. 2 wins, 5 losses to this point, and more damningly, those 12 unanswered goals that they coughed up against, allowed to be coughed up against them, against Gold Coast on the weekend. So that is the worry, because Dean Cox has come in with this new attitude, and this new mindset, and this new way of playing where the John Longmire, old-fashioned contested ball and sort of accountable one-on-one action, this sort of team defence, this team way of playing, it's just not working to this point. And it's an interesting situation that, given what they've coming off with last year with the psychological trauma of the second grand final smashing inside 3 seasons, going into this season, not working to this point.
Spot on.
Grand final from last year, top of the table. That I would look at that if I was them and think, right, how are we turning this around? Something's got to change quick.
Yeah, and there's nothing obvious because they're still without Goulden, they're still without Papley, the captain Mills is out, and as we know, they've got injuries to Amati in the forward line, and Logan McDonald's had a setback as well. So there's not a lot to go to.
Giants, they don't call it the Battle of the Bridges anymore. Do they call it anyway?
Sydney Derby.
That becomes a massive game.
Brag artist up next. Have you got something to brag about?
No.
I don't think.
We're close to out of time. I've done 3 segments at your behest on the run.
Well done. Yes, good.
I think we're almost out of time. Are we going to be able to squeeze the artist in?
Yeah, we'll squeeze a couple of calls in.
If Damo shuts up, right, I have a spell.
Thank you, Damo. 1 3 5 3. Monday,
Well done,
Brag
Damo.
artist coming up next.